Welcome to the Boxing Source Midweek Report, where we tackle the latest topics in the sport of boxing here up to this point every single Wednesday. Time to start the show. All right, yo. Let me see here. Had the whole thing with the sound looked like the sound thing kind of got switched over here. So maybe you're able to hear me here for a little bit. All right, so I have to like do a another take on this joint here because I was talking about the whole thing with Jerome Boots Ennis to start off with because they had the whole thing as far as like Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing potentially saying that Boots Ennis could face Josh Kelly. He said, "Well, Nate, listen, I made an offer to Josh Kelly and his team, but it wasn't necessarily a good offer because this is Josh Kelly that's been getting these Riyadh season checks, and with these Riyadh season checks, he thinks that he may be worth all of this money. So what the one that we offered him, yeah, I don't think that he's going to accept it. So you had that on one front, and then you had like another interview with I think the trainer there for Josh Kelly, and he said that hey, it pretty much could be like that same thing that whatever they offered for Josh Kelly wasn't really up to par as far as like what he was getting beforehand. But it's something where Boots Ennis trying to have another fight here in Philadelphia is what they're planning on, right? So with that being said, what they're going to do is they're going to try to see if they can get an opponent. Now, Josh Kelly at least was one of those guys that I didn't necessarily expect there as a potential opponent for Boots Ennis going into 154 pounds. Now, Josh Kelly is rated in the WBO rankings, right? He is there at number 3 in the WBO at 154 pounds. They got Boots Ennis currently at number 4 in the WBO, right? He's also ranked at number 3 in the IBF, and also has a position there in the WBC rankings. But with Josh Kelly being out there at number 3 in the WBO and number 3 in the IBF, that kind of like would make some sense there for Boots Ennis. You know what I mean? Shout out to Ron in the building, man. What's going on, man? What's going on there with you, man? But we still have like I would say a couple of days before we get even more information on it. Might see that it could end up being Josh Kelly anyway. Outside of that, I would say that there's like other potential opponents, so to speak. Now, one of them, I kind of like propose is Jesus Ramos, right? Jesus Ramos Jr. There, of course, only has that one lone loss to Erickson Lubin. And before these new WBA rankings come out, he's going to be there at number 2 in the WBA, right? Below Abbas Barau. And Barau is facing Yoenis Tejas next month over in Orlando. So if you have Boots Ennis going up to 154 pounds as the former super champion there at welterweight, he's going to have one of those top rankings there within the WBA when those rankings do come out here, probably by what I'd say around this time tomorrow. So I would say Jesus Ramos is a potential opponent. Another one that could be out there is Andreas Katsarakis. And the reason why I say that is because Katsarakis has been in the WBA rankings for some time. He did have a couple of good wins there, up and coming to go up these 154-pound rankings. Of course, had his win over Brandon Adams in that OTX tournament there for 154 pounds. You know what I mean? So yeah, he said, yeah, slow week of news equals a bunch of fake news. Yeah, Ron, you exactly right. You're exactly right with that one, man. Oh man, because like to have at least this thing here, it kind of like is almost like one of those things where they throw out the lure, like it's if you're fishing and you throw out the lure and see how many people are able to get reeled in with what you got. You know what I mean? And I think that's what Eddie Hearn is kind of like putting out there when he made it public that offer was sent out there to Josh Kelly. And a number of folks have said like, well, Josh Kelly, are you kidding me, Josh Kelly? But here's my thing. Josh Kelly ain't gonna be the only person that they, offer to have a fight. It's not like, oh, well, we only got one person that we're gonna send the offer to, and we're gonna tell you that that one person is Josh Kelly. No, that's not necessarily how it works in any sense for fights get made. They're not going to tell you like every single fighter or potential fight that could be out there for their guy. So you may hear Josh Kelly, but just be like, hey, that ain't necessarily the only person that's out there. You know what I mean? So there's that, man. Shout out 2 cents in the building. Salute to you. So the thing is like with Josh Kelly, one, do I think it's a potential, a possible fight? Yeah, most I can, because if you're going to have a fight that's going to be over in Philadelphia, you're trying to have another fight in Philadelphia for Boots Ennis. Josh Kelly would be, one of those guys where you could have him be on the B side. He hasn't necessarily, had like very notable fights to where a serious crowd was, out there in attendance for, his events or whatever it is. But given that he had his last bout on June 6th over in Newcastle, then he'd be right there to kind of like say he's almost as active as Boots is. He would have a fight, that's this year. Boots had his last fight on April 12th, so you at least have two fighters that kind of like have been fairly active at least within this year, instead of having somebody that hadn't necessarily fought this year yet, or hadn't fought like in about what I would say 10 to 12 months. That's the thing about it, is like if you're gonna have Boots Ennis here in action at 154 pounds, yeah, it would kind of like make a little bit more sense if he fought somebody that actually did have maybe one or two fights this year, instead of someone that you kind of like say, hey, hasn't fought since what, last July or last October or whatever it is, right? So at least you would have that on that front with Josh Kelly, right? But on the same token, you have other opponents that could be out there, potential opponents, but it's about, okay, are they going to be available? A number of people are talking about Bakr Murtazaliev. But the thing with Bakr Murtazaliev is he has a mandatory with Erickson Lubin. And the Erickson Lubin thing was ordered. They had the 30 days. They have until next week to come to an agreement or whatnot before it goes to purse bid. So you can't like go up from 147 pounds, be the IBF champion, and go up to 154 and have that immediate shot against the IBF champion, especially when there's a mandatory due. It doesn't necessarily work that way. So they go back to Murtazaliev, not necessarily there. Okay. You had the whole WBO situation. New WBO champion Xander Zayas. He won that title there on Saturday. So that's out. Initially, when he made the announcement to go up to 154, what are the potential challenges that I thought could have been out there for him was Joannes Tejas. Joannes Tejas is the interim champion there for the WBA. But as I mentioned, that Joannes Tejas does have his bout against Abbas Barao next month in Orlando. So that takes him out of the equation. You know what I mean? So yeah. Good question. Good question here. How long were fans complaining about Lamont Rose Jr. before the fight? A number of people were. Why? Because they felt like, oh, Lamont Rose Jr., are you getting him up from 130 pounds? Oh, he only has that title at 130 pounds. He hasn't had any fights at 135. Well, they assumed that he ain't had no fights at 135. But as you see, one, of course, he was pretty much like larger in a sense there than Tank Davis. And of course, with Tank Davis started his career around like featherweight, 126 to 130, and then 135. Lamar Rose Jr. started his career around 135 and went down to 130 to compete, and then went back up to 135 for his bout against Tank Davis. You know what I mean? So that being said, we got to see what's going to happen here within this next day or two when it comes to the WBA rankings. And once we see where Boots Ennis is in the WBA rankings and what other changes happen, then maybe we get like a better idea of who would be his opponent in October. It's sometimes folks need to, just shut up and enjoy the show. Yeah. You never really know what could end up happening there. I mean, look at what happened earlier this year, right? What was that? The end of The end of May, right? You had Caleb Plant there against Armando Resendiz. And Caleb Plant was highly favored against Armando Resendiz. You did have that co-feature bout there with Jamal Charlo, right, against Thomas Amana. And folks were like saying, oh, this is like what are they saying in wrestling, like squash matches or whatever it is. These two A-side guys are gonna beat whoever they facing, and then later in the year they're gonna face each other. What ended up happening? Armando Resendiz ended up outpointing and defeating Caleb Plant. So that kind of like nixed all of those plans that they were trying to have, there in reference to all of that. So here you gotta say, like, first off, okay, what first, who is Boots gonna end up fighting? And second, if that's still gonna be like a style matchup that, hey, maybe we could be something different. Now the thing about it is like, with Boots Ennis, people expect a lot out of Boots Ennis. Okay. But at the same token, having, let's say, okay, how would I put this? Having him face a guy like a Josh Kelly is one thing, but you some people are putting expectations on Boots Ennis that they have not done to other fighters in the past. Okay. So if a fighter, even if they won a world championship, excuse me, or a couple world titles, and they move up, then they get like almost like a pass of sorts, because they're like, okay, let me have this fight to get acclimated to the weight, and then after that, I'll have even more of a bigger challenge. You know what I'm saying? So there it is, man. Yeah, what's up? All right, shout out to Ray Davis there in the building, man. It says, hey, glad you're outside making a great some content. He said, yeah, hit the like button, support the Boston Source here. We on YouTube, we're on Rumble, and all that type of stuff. Twitch too, we're on Twitch as well. You know what I mean? So, we just doing this work. Of course, I got the website, thebostonsource.net. Posted up a couple of articles there, fighting and photos from last Saturday at the theater at Madison Square Garden. I still got to catch up with all that type of stuff, because I'm not quite like the folks like within Top Rank or within Premier Boxing Champions or within Matchroom or something like that. I don't necessarily have a team of people taking photos and stuff like that. So I only got myself. So whether you're following the social media or checking out the website, then you'll be able to see some of the photos out there with all of that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it is, man. Yeah, we watch the fights, man. You never know. Said, yeah, all these do have skills or wrinkles to their game to get to this level in the sport. Yeah, you gotta watch it play out and see the dynamics on Fight Night. Yeah, I mean, no fighters out there perfect. You know what I mean? No fighters out there perfect. They got those flaws. They've been caught a couple times and things like that. So with that being said, you got to see what happens here with Boots Ennis. You know what I mean, and see how that goes. And the other thing too, right? And we kind of get caught up in this whole best fighting the best moniker, right? And that for fighters that are at the top or pretty much at the top of the division or like world champions and things like that, it seems like a lot of fans expect them to fight top level guys every single time, almost in like 3 or 4 times a year. That doesn't happen in this game anymore. It didn't happen in the past. The thing about it is like you had these guys that were like world champions at the top of the game and still had a couple one-offs, as they say. You know what I mean? You rarely have those instances where they have like a serious run of facing like top 10 guys within the division every single time. You know what I mean? That didn't necessarily happen. What was it? Like for example, let me see if I can go back. Like for example, like a Mike Tyson, maybe, right? All right, so you facing, was it Trevor Burbick for the WBC title, right? Win the WBC title, right? And then a few months later, you're facing James, what is it, Bone Crusher Smith there. Trevor Burbick was 31-4-1. Bone Crusher Smith was 19-5. And then next fight, you're facing Pinklin Thomas at 29-1, Tony Tucker at 34-0. Now that was within what I would say like 8-9 months. You're not gonna see that here in the game anymore. You're not gonna see these guys like facing like he was a world heavyweight champion, and he defended it at least with a WBC belt. Let's see, one, two, three, four times within 1987. That's Mike Tyson, right? Four times in 1987. Where are you ever going to see these days any champion in any level defending their belt four times in a year? In any level, like in any of the 15 or whatever divisions that they have right now, what champion do you see is defending their title four times within a year? It just, yeah, yeah, man. Dimitri Bivol took, a tune-up before Beterbiev, on a turkey card, no less. I mean, yeah, because remember when they had the joint there with it was supposed to be what the initial one, right? And Beterbiev got hurt. Bevo ended up fighting on that fight date that was proposed for their initial bout before they actually had their bout later in the year, right? So even Bevo, kind of like took a fight, there in the interim. So that's the thing about it. It's like you gotta, if you want to stay active in the game, sometimes you might have to take, as they say, one-offs. You can't like say, hey, I'm gonna take on the number two guy in the division, and then like maybe about 3 or 4 months later, I'm going to take on the number five guy in the division. And then, like 3 or 4 months later, I'm going to take on the number three guy. And then months after that, maybe the number six guy. Like it really doesn't work like that in the game of boxing anymore. So it's tough to, one, try to make those fights that they're supposed to be high level fights. And then two, be able to do that often enough to where we see them more than twice a year. I mean, look at, like, for example, you got Devin Miles Haney, right? Devin Haney fought in May. His next fight is in November. Is there any fight in between that? No. You know what I mean? How about, I mean, props to maybe like Brian Norman Jr. Brian Norman Jr., okay, he was able to have his fight against Derek Cuevas and then there against Jin Sasaki before having this upcoming bout against Devin Haney. So that's like three times. You know what I mean? So for some, it's rare to see like a world champion be able to defend their title three times, but it just depends on the situation, the opponent, and all that type of stuff. And hey, at least with Brian Norman Jr., he was like a newly crowned WBO welterweight champion when he had his first defenses against Derek Cuevas, right? And he was coming off, of course, everyone knows he was coming off hand injury, all that type of stuff. And then the next thing, Jin Sasaki, have the win against Jin Sasaki. Then he's put in his position to fight Devin Miles Haney on November 22nd in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. You know what I mean? Yep. Yeah. 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 That first and middle, man. Yeah. But so sometimes here, I say like, the full name and stuff like that, right? So yeah, that's why I kind of like mention it like that, right? Yeah. But as you see, like it's kind of difficult to have these world champions or high profile fighters fight more than twice a year. It's rarely that you get to see them like three times. So with that being said, like for Boots Ennis having his fight in April against Iamana Stanionis, and then now having to figure out what was going on, had the announcement to go up to 154. Now they're saying about reserving a venue there in Philadelphia for him in October, most likely, and that'll be two fights within the year. You know what I mean? So that's what you have. So now we just got to wait it out as far as like saying, okay, who is the opponent's going to be? I said like, hey, hope it's like a Jesus Ramos. Not sure if it's going to be a Jesus Ramos, given two things. Number one, they already like Jesus Ramos being under, the whole TGB, PBC type thing. They wouldn't necessarily want to have another one of their fighters going out to facing like someone within Matchroom, unless if it's pretty good and they get the percentage. If they have it outside of their, promotional banner, the fighter would have to give a percentage towards a promotional company. But with Jesus Ramos, right, he's not only highly ranked in the WBA, he's also highly ranked in the WBC, right? And of course, Sebastian Fundora did have his win recently, so it would be more about, okay, is Jesus Ramos going to be able to have a chance to fight for and win a world title with the WBA? or maybe with the WBC, given that he might be next in line or whatever it is. Because yeah, I know we do have Virgil Ortiz as the interim champion, but he's nursing an injury himself too. So it's not like Virgil Ortiz is going to be coming back and fighting like a Sebastian Fundora or somebody like that there for that WBC title. So maybe Jesus Ramos could be in line to be next for Sebastian Fundora. So that's the thing about it. Shout out to brother Joe there in the building, man. It's a yeah, hey, it's my job, man. I'm a broadcast. I keep saying it. I'm a broadcast journalist. Like Bobby the Brain Heenan. All right, so there you go. All right, so yeah, so that's my thing is getting all that as much information as I possibly can and just providing it to the public in a formal as possible and as upfront as possible on that instance, right? Yeah. So that's the whole thing there with Boots Ennis, right? So you got Josh Kelly, you got Jesus Ramos. I did mention Andreas Katsarakis. Um, who else? Somebody else like mentioned. Shout out to L Dub. He mentioned someone else, and that was actually let me see, Uwisma Lima. Now, Uwisma Lima isn't in the WBA rankings right now, and he isn't in the WBO rankings right now. He is actually in the IBF rankings, and he is currently, I think he is the IBO super welterweight champion. Okay. He does what? I think he has like one loss, but he was able to acquire the IBO title there at 154 pounds, so that could be a potential opponent there. Now, I think, I talked with or chopped it up with, brother Joe. And he says that maybe Boots Ennis should, try to wait it out and see if he could challenge Xander Zayas for that WBO title. But I think, we might try to see about if he does fight Josh Kelly in October, then maybe that could be the angle to go after the WBO title in 2026. Because, regardless of the current situation with Top Rank, I think that they're going to try to work out something to have Xander Zayas defend his title at least once, maybe in Puerto Rico, maybe at the big room at Madison Square Garden. But I think they may have those type of plans here later on down the line. But we just got to see what's going to be next here for Top Rank because given what they had on ESPN and they blew it, and I'm like, man, all that money within that budget, and they couldn't really secure like the big fights or the high profile fights or fighters that would have been able to keep it going. I mean, a promotional company like Top Rank Incorporated, being one of the most established promotional companies in boxing, it just seems like it would be surprising that they kind of lost a deal, network deal like that with ESPN. But hey, I mean, it's a really, really bad situation, so to speak, are there with him, right? All right. So that being said, that's what I had there, at least for the time being, for the thing for Jerome Boots Ennis. Like I said, within the next couple of days or so, like first, you probably get an idea of where Boots is going to be in the WBA rankings. And Eddie Hearn did say, like, within 48 hours or so, you might see, like, who Jerome Boots Ennis is fighting. Now, if that's the case, right, and this like kind of like happens all the time with promotional companies and stuff like that. And I mentioned earlier, they throw out the fishing reel to see who's gonna be lured in, right? And to put out a name out there is to kind of like see or get a temperature of the public to see what they would feel or how they would feel about a potential fight. And so with Eddie Hearn mentioning Josh Kelly, like folks was like, you know what I mean? They ain't feeling it. They ain't quite feeling it. But hey, if it's Josh Kelly, it's Josh Kelly. If it's somebody else, it might be a little bit more notable. Then hey, because even before Josh Kelly's name was mentioned, some folks were putting out Brian Mendoza as a potential opponent. And when people said Brian Mendoza, they were like, nah, not even Brian Mendoza. Even though Brian Mendoza does have a win over the current WBC Super Welterweight champion, Sebastian Fundora, knocked him out. Lone loss for Sebastian Fundora, right? But still, Brian Mendoza, I guess, to some people, that isn't quite at the level there for Jerome Boots Ennis going up to 154 pounds. But hey, it remains to be seen. As Joe says, yeah, ham and egger. Yeah, yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm at as many presses as I can make. You know what I mean? Just getting out there, at least from the East Coast or whatnot, and sometimes over in the West Coast there. So you may see me over in Las Vegas in September. You might. Now, as far as like the pressers that happened for that particular fight when they had it over in New York, nah, I didn't make that. No, nah. Now when they had the whole thing for Fanatics Fest, nah, I wasn't gonna be in that whole craze. No, but still, trying to get out there, for that week. I did have, a conversation with the WBC president, Mauricio Suleiman, that, will be out there during the fight weekend. And he did announce that they're going to have a WBC undisputed video game tournament that's supposed to be scheduled for September 12th, right? So that's like one event that's going to be out there. Of course, you're going to have the Box Fan Expo. The annual Box Fan Expo is going to be out there. A number of legends, fighters, coaches, trainers, all of that. They'll be out there, of course, because it's a really, really big event there for September 13th. Canelo Alvarez versus Terrence Crawford for the undisputed super middleweight titles. So, hey, at least for me, as far as like events go, I'm going to say, you know what? At least I would say that I was there around the area when that fight happened. You know what I'm saying? So you'll probably see me out and about at least for that particular fight week, and at least for this upcoming month here. What is it? August. There really isn't that many high profile events here. You know what I mean? You do have something that's scheduled for the UK, right? You got Moses Atama versus Dylan White, right? That's August 16th. But here in the States, not really like, any pay-per-view level events, of course, because of the whole thing with Tank Davis there, had a supposedly scheduled fight for August 16th in Las Vegas, but nope. And, of course, a whole thing that happened, with him over in Florida, kind of like postponed a lot of things. But now you have people saying like, oh, Tank is pretty much like done in boxing, like done in boxing. Like not even a fight with Lamont Rose Jr., but a fight with anybody. It said like, oh, he retired, supposedly. And this kind of came from a certain person within boxing that made this post. And they, make, the whole little generalized statement. If you're a journalist of sorts, you make the generalized statement according to sources or according to multiple sources. It has been said that Tank Davis is basically done with boxing, retired, and all that. Yeah. Hey, yeah. I'm gonna see. When I'm when I'm gonna lock down everything for that fight week, man, and then I'll let you know. But yeah, I'm gonna be out there for sure for Las Vegas. But oh man, I want to see if I can pull that joint up, man. For the August 16th, 2 cents, that's supposedly in the works. Let me see, but I wanted to see if I could come up with this tweet because I don't know because my thing was I kind of I blocked this guy, right? So yeah. Oh yeah. All right, here it is, man. And this is coming from yesterday. Quote from several very reliable sources. Baltimore's finest, Tank Davis, is retiring. Won't fight again, is what he's telling those close to him. Tank's supposedly fed up with boxing. Tank's retired till his money runs low. That's a quote from Mr. Rick Glazer. Now, a number of you that's in Twitter, boxing Twitter, whatever it is, that have seen multitude of Rick Glazer's posts, this the way this is delivered is not surprising. But I'm like, come on, folks, y'all are getting this from Rick Glazer when you have people that are actually in the camp for Tank Davis that are basically in public in multiple instances that have basically said no, this isn't the case. Real quick, shout out 2 cents. Said, are they scrapping that car or do we get a replacement event? It is in the works to try to get something for scheduled for September 20th. That is the uh rumored thing. September 20th, maybe reserve something in Los Angeles, California. So you might see like a number of the fights that were suggested for the fight card for August 16th. They had reserved T-Mobile Arena for it. But a number of those fights that could have been on that card, they might push it back to see if they can secure it for September 20th. There, so you do have that. All right. So yeah, had the whole thing in there with Rick Glazer. I wanted to see, man. I could have just shared this thing here. Let me see if I can run that because shout out to being on Rumble. I'm on the Rumble joint. I kind of like fizzle away from StreamYard when it comes to live joints. You know what I mean? I fizzle away from all that because StreamYard sometimes they bugging. All right. All right. So let me see here if I could run this real quick. I should be able to pull this up. All right. Here it is. Yeah. So yeah, there it is. Right. So yeah. So there's a whole thing there from Rick Glazer. Okay. As y'all see, I read it. There it is. You know what I mean? Shout out to G Funky Boxing in the building. Says hit the like button to support. You see what's going on. You see what's going down here at the Boxing Source here for the Midweek Report. All right. Now, y'all see what is read. This was over 24 hours ago. You see like the views over 148,000 views for that. Yeah. So I mean, that's something there to say the least, right? Um, but come on, y'all. As much as we have, who would I say? Shout out to Rise, the Rise podcast and all that type of stuff. Um, you have the coaches there for Tank Davis, on there at least a few times or whatever it is, right? Coach Kenny Ellis, Coach Calvin Ford, there with Coach Squeeze and of course, senior there over at Upton Gym. And it's not like you can't like reach out to him or whatever it is, but Coach Kenny had basically, denied all that. He pretty much said that's fake news. I wanted to see if I could, try to get it here, but I'm going to see if I could, look it up or something like that. I did see, what was it, Joe, that had something here, so I'm going to see if I could pull that up here real quick. It says, "Do you believe Devin?" I'm not gonna put it on. I'm not gonna put it on this thing. He asked, "Do you believe that Devin Miles Haney, okay, will go through with the Brian Norman Jr. fight?" Okay. Um, Now, given the whole situation that had been happening in the previous week, when Bill Haney talked about the whole thing with Vada testing and starting out with Vada testing, you would think that they would have some people would have doubts. Showtime Sean Porter, brought it up one time, said it had doubts. Um, if that was the case, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it wouldn't. The thing is like for me, I don't see like a reason why they would try to go, why they went towards that direction. But I mean, if it's another challenge for them, it's another challenge for them. Because remember, if it wasn't going to be Brian Norman Jr. versus Devin Haney, the whole thing with Brian Norman Jr. being on the top rank, they had another world champion there at 140 pounds, the top rank in Teofimo Lopez. And Teofimo Lopez was proposed to fight with Brian Norman Jr. last year, and he ended up passing it. You know what I mean? Shout out to Tego there in the building, man. Salute to you, man. We had a great conversation there with our brother Greg Hackett there, man. So salute to you, man. You was out there cooking in that live the other day, man. It says Secret Dead Smooth says that Rick Glazer is a nobody in the industry. He don't know Jack. All right, oh man. It said it says one of the people that told Rick Glazer that Tank was on his way out. That kind of like stems from what Tank Davis was saying before his first fight or his initial fight, of course, with Lamont Rhodes Jr. saying like, hey, he isn't really feeling it. He's been in this game for a long time since he was like 5, 6 years old, and that he kind of like feels like this could be his like last go round. Now, after that fight, he said, hey, maybe he has like 3 or 4 more fights left in him. But given his current situation, we got to see what happens here with this first, and then see what he's going to be doing later on down the line. You know what I mean? He said, yeah, you know what I'm saying? He had some. We gave like free game. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, but with Tank Davis, okay, you do have a few things that are in front of you. Still, if you want to continue your career and continue the deal that you have there with Amazon Prime. Okay, he was able to have get that deal with Amazon Prime. Like he was going to be basically like the flagship person there for Premier Boxing Champions or whatnot. You know what I mean? And we just had his fight with Frank Martin last year, and he had his fight here with Montrose Jr. Of course, there were a couple of fights that were kind of like put out there, proposed last year after his fight with Frank Martin didn't necessarily go through. So that's why he had Lamont Rose Jr. as an opponent. Okay, the fight itself ended up being better than a number of people expected, as we was talking about earlier. Only people within the DMV area knew that they had a history with each other. So that's what made for that to be a very, very good fight. Wanted to see if they could go forward with the rematch, and didn't necessarily work out. And then of course, as I was mentioning before, what over happened in Florida. So you got to see how they're gonna work that out in Florida first. Once that's cleared up, then we potentially will see what's next. We were saying there like, hey, he'll end up fighting in September and October, most likely in October. Um, as I was saying before, they would try to see if they could secure a date for September 20th for a PBC on Prime card, right? And then after that, maybe you'll see Tank in October in a Prime pay per view event. You know what I mean? So that could be pretty much the case, or maybe it could be something else. We'll see. But this freaking Rick Glazer, man, like, come on, man. Like I said, man. So let me see if I could run this thing here. Like we were saying, per usual, fake news. That should be what Coach Kenny Ellis is saying there, man. So you see Coach Kenny, of course, like I said, he's out there, over at Upton Gym or back and forth between Upton and Miami, working with Tank. And I mean, I'm like, I don't know why a number of people kind of run with stories from folks that aren't necessarily that close to the person or the subject at hand. So, I mean, it is what it is on that. It said like Tank versus Roach rematch will be huge. Hey, I'm thinking it really should be huge, man. I'm hoping that it is. The only thing that I was saying, at least immediately after the first fight, I thought the rematch could have been at least over in DC, man. I try to say, hey, have the rematch in DC and whatever it is, but nope, they were trying to move it over to Las Vegas, and hey, the money's in Vegas, site fees in Vegas. You get much more in Vegas than they would have if they would have had the fight in DC. So they rescheduled this fight. It's still going to be in Vegas. October, it will still be in Vegas. You know what I mean? So definitely look forward to if you're gonna have that secure. Now, with that being said, right? I don't think it's gonna be. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be in September though. I don't think. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be in September. Not if they're gonna work towards having an event on September 20th. They're potentially for Los Angeles. If they do have that card, then they'll have a completely separate card on scale for Tank Davis and either Lamont Rose Jr. or maybe some other opponent. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's the thing. But Joe says a Tank versus the Roach rematch would have been huge. It would have happened already. Mm, like how in what magnitude? I would ask that. In what magnitude? Because like I said before, you had the whole thing there with Tank Davis having this deal with Amazon Prime. So you pretty much would have like a minimum of sorts or whatever it is for each fight that he has, right? To me, this situation with Tank Davis and Lamar Rose Jr. is almost like Floyd Mayweather, Marcos Maidana. Mayweather had a win in the first fight, but a number of people felt like it was much closer than the scorecards would have indicated. So Floyd said, "You know what? Look, I'm gonna prove to y'all. I'm gonna prove to y'all that I'm TBE. Y'all thought I lost that match. Well, check this out. I'm gonna fight him again, and I'm gonna cook him." And well, that's what he ended up doing. Um, yeah, so yeah, he said the rematch is a huge fight would have happened already. Now remember, I was kind of disappointed when Tank had put out like that tweet saying that, hey, I'll be back ready by the end of May or something like that. You know what I'm saying? That's what he said initially, like it would be around Memorial Weekend or something, like almost like 2 full or 3 months after. I'm like, no, I don't know if it would be that soon. You know what I mean? But now, with this going on, August 16th would have been the date, but at least right now, nope, that ain't the case. You know what I'm saying? That ain't it. So we'll have to look for something else or another date, down the line. At least I kind of like check the whole thing here with the schedule, at least for Nevada. Um, and actually, they have something at least put on reserve, so to speak, for September 20th, but actually at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. So at least for now, if you go on to the thing for the Nevada State Athletic Commission and you check out the events calendar, you'll see there for September 20th that TGB Promotions has that date held currently. So they do have it there for September 20th. Nothing for October as of yet. So we'll see how that is, man. So Tank versus Roach is a diehard matchup. Yeah. I mean, it is. Hey, if you like boxing, strategically, uh, two fighters that are like matched up against each other, basically don't have like any excuse me, any real separation between each other. Yeah, Tank versus Roach is that. Okay. And we got more than a number of people expecting in their first matchup at Barclays Center on March 1st of this year. So we got to see what's gonna happen on that. September 20th is a great date. Hey man, hopefully it ain't a date where they're gonna have it back in Vegas. I'm like, come on, man. I already put down for going out there for the September 13th weekend. Listen, I can't like I be saying like, hey, I got 2 trips to Las Vegas per year at the very least to cover a boxing event. Okay, at least 2 of them. You feel me? After that, nah, I'm good. I'm good. You know what I'm saying? Because hey, them flights, 5 hour plus flights, nah, man, it's kind of getting to take a toll on me, man. So that's why I said like, hey, one part of the year, another one in another part of the year, and then I'm good. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, but first off, like I said, we got to see what's going to be going down with Tank first, as far as like outside the ring. And once that outside the ring stuff is cleared up, then we get a better idea of when he would be able to get back inside the ring. Say, hey, even Joe Rogan was talking about Lamont Roach and saying how big the rematch will be. Now you have someone like a Joe Rogan talking about that fight. As he said, like when he did the whole little press thing for the initial fight for March. They had Tank out there like in Breakfast Club and what is it like Gillian Wallow or something like that, or what I mean, talk about Andre Ward or whatever. That was all part of the plan to build that initial fight up, and then with the fight being as good as it was, just made it even better. So people anticipating the rematch, they just trace back to what's going on or what happened in the first fight. That'll make them excited for this one. You know what I mean? There was only two Vegas fights I was gonna go cover this year. Yeah, man. Said maybe you should think of moving to Vegas full time. Nah, man. Nah. The only nah. I have too much because the reason why I wouldn't, even if it would be like I would be probably like more successful or whatever it is, or maybe I'll have a little bit more success in like what I'm doing, not just with the whole boxing thing, but outside of the boxing thing. Like there's too much tied to the East Coast for me to go up and go out to Las Vegas at this point. So I was like, nah, couldn't do it. Like me being up in the DC area, it's pretty much good for me because one, I have access to getting to anywhere within the East Coast, whether it's driving, flying, train, or whatever. And with it being a hub, either I could fly from DC, Baltimore, New York, Newark, anywhere. So that's why I pretty much like say, hey, DC is good for me, man. So that's why I don't really like consider like moving over to Vegas or something like that. You know what I mean? So, but I don't know. Anything could happen. Anything could happen on that front. You feel me? But yeah, the thing with Tank, like I said, it's make make sure that he gets what he needs to get straight outside the ring. Once that happens, then we get a better idea of when you'll be able to see him back in the ring this year. I know that there was like a slight possibility that he could have an exhibition with Jake Paul. Now, if he would have had a decision win over Lamont Roach in March, then it could have been a possibility. But with it being a draw, kind of like muddles things a little bit. Now, here's the thing. No, I don't know the specifics of the contract that was between Tank Davis and Lamont Roach Jr. But you defend the title against and that's supposed to be like a voluntary defense or whatever it is. I don't know, but when it's a draw, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're obligated to have a rematch. So, hey, if they don't have a rematch right away, they don't have a rematch right away. It's still revisited. Who knows? So yeah, man. So once we figure out what's going on with all of that, then you'll get a better idea of okay, first Tank will be able to fight again, and then you pretty much could have an opponent. Now I know some people are saying, hey, we saw what happened on July 19th at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. I'm like, nah, that ain't gonna happen, man. It's now if he won, possibly, but it was a draw. Thank goodness it was a draw and all that type of stuff. Oh, that's the other thing too. Hey, Joe, you might still be here in the chat. Hey, I didn't look into the thing that Coach Ronnie Shields was saying before the end of the show yesterday when he talked about Thomas Taylor, the referee, there in that fight. I gotta look it up. I gotta see if I can find it because they had something there was something going on with that. Yo, that would be really really big, yo. But I gotta look into it. Reference to the fight between Manny Pacquiao and Mario Barrios. But if I can't find it, then hey, me, we'll. I guess it was much about nothing on that front. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's mainly the whole thing. Is like a number of people that are around the boxing circles, they want to run ahead to posting some things that aren't necessarily true or aren't fully true. You know what I mean? And say, okay, yeah, this is what it is. Like I said, with the whole thing with Boots Ennis and Josh Kelly, we don't necessarily know yet. And a lot of people are kind of like dismissing the fight. But like I said, I mean, one, who was out there, who was available, and two, like, you got to be able to see if they're able to accept what's out there. So that's it on that front. And then the whole thing with Tank, like, I had seen a couple of posts about it beforehand, before the whole thing with the Rick Glazer post. But I'm like, come on, y'all. Like, it's not that difficult to follow up on something like this, especially of a story of that magnitude. So, hey, at least here on the Boston Source, we try to make things as fair and balanced as possible. Try to report what we get relayed. If not, then most likely it's going to be like a rumor. Like, we have something for a rumor mill. You'll see like a rumor mill on the bostonsource.net. So you might see if something actually does happen from the rumor that we post, or it just doesn't go through with that. So yeah, but that's the thing about it. Oh, this was, oh man, hey, but it's like I said. I mean, if it ain't him, who else is gonna be out there? Like I said, Jesus Ramos, possible, but I say unlikely. Andres Sarakis, are you gonna accept that as an opponent? Um, when someone mentioned like potentially Brian Mendoza, they weren't really cool with it. No, that's incorrect. That's incorrect. You can't say that you're offered a fight when that person is not even available. That's number one. And then number two, that fight's still going to be on the horizon. Okay, so yeah, um, Virgil Ortiz Jr. is not even available. He's not. So you can't bring up Ortiz when Ortiz had his fight February of this year, had an injury, and his own promoter said that he wouldn't be available for a fight of that magnitude. So it's one thing to talk about Virgil Ortiz Jr. that is currently standing as a WBC interim champion, but when he's injured, he's nursing an injury, and your own team is saying that he's not going to be ready, available for a fight of that magnitude yet. That they say they want to have a one-off. They said that they wanted to have a one-off. So if they're saying it, hey, I can't, go off or go against what they're saying. You know. So with that being said, we'll see what happens here first with Boots Ennis in the next couple of days. Probably by Friday, we'll have something. And then from there, after that fight is announced, and then after that fight takes place, some of y'all may likely see the fight that y'all want to see within 154 pounds. So there you go. But that's mainly what I had here within a 1 hour time frame here for the Midweek Report. Big ups to everyone that's been able to listen live. Hit the like button if you enjoy the content. If you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button. Trying to get over to 3,000 subscribers on YouTube. We're also available on Rumble. Whole thing with Rumble is, I'm starting to see if I can upload more videos on Rumble. So those that don't necessarily mess with YouTube that much anymore, you go over to Rumble and you can see the content on Rumble. We'll be right back at it here for the Boxing Source podcast scheduled for Sunday night. All right. We're going to see if we can talk about the fights that will take place in Chicago. So y'all be sure to tune in on the Zone for those fights. And yeah, I mean, I did catch the fights that happened earlier today. You did have, I'll just talk about that here real quick before I roll out, right? Because you had Kenshiro Taraji defending his titles against Ricardo Sandoval, right? Unified titles there in the flyweight division. Kenshiro Taraji is nicknamed the Amazing Boy, coming in with a record of 25-1. Ricardo Sandoval coming in there with a record of 26-2. Taraji had been mentioned around like a few publications and people that talk boxing and all that, been around the top 10 pound for pound, right? For us, we pretty much like had him a little shade outside of the top 10 for pound for pound. You know what I mean? We had him actually at number 13 pound for pound going into this particular bout. Okay, but with thing here with Ricardo Sandoval, yeah, he looked like he was in a gear to try to get this win and become the new world champion. And you know, taken away from that knockdown that Taraji scored, Ricardo Sandoval to me looked like he was just a step ahead of Kenshiro Taraji. He was landing the right hand a good number of times before Taraji could really react. Sometimes even when Sandoval was backing up, he was like baiting Kenshiro Taraji and was able to throw the right hand and land it. But it's still, at least in the second half of the fight for me, I thought it was a good tactical matchup between those two. Ended up being a split decision. You had a score of 114-113 for Taraji, which actually is 6 rounds to 6 with the knockdown. And then you had a score of 115-112 for Sandoval, which is 8 rounds to 4. And then you had a score of 117-110 in favor of Ricardo Sandoval. That's 10 rounds to 2. So one of the judges had 10 rounds basically in favor of Ricardo Sandoval. I guess, they might have had, a number of close rounds in that 12 round bout. And I guess he gave him a majority of those close rounds. But now you have a new unified champion there in Ricardo Sandoval, and for Kenshiro Taraji, that is his second professional loss. Will they have a rematch? I don't know. It was a good fight. Like I said, it's a good fight. You can still catch it. It's on its own. Good fight. But, with that being said, with Taraji, for those that kind of like try to make a case for him to be in the pound for pound top 10, this, of course, with the loss, of course, it kind of like would remove him. But remember, his last few fights, either he's had, majority decision wins or he had to pull off a win, in the last round. I actually, like, for example, in his last bout against Seigo Akui, he was down on 2 of the 3 scorecards before he scored that technical knockout victory. So, hey, there was like a case against Taraji. There you go. You know what I mean? Said don't follow those strawweights. So I'll say he tried to catch that. Oh man, hey, like I said, man, hey, I'm a journalist, so I gotta cover as many divisions as possible. You know what I'm saying? Flyweights, super flyweights, all that. Light flyweight. That's probably about as low as I can go. I don't know about the pedopteries or whatever they got. Unless if it's wait, who is it? Unless if it's like what Oscar Collazo or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, sometimes it gets way too much to try to keep in touch with all of these fighters and all of these divisions there, man. But yeah, with this fight card that was out there, that was on the zone early this morning, at least in the East Coast, it was around like 6 a.m. or 6:30 a.m. There when it started. But you had like a few good fights that were on the card there. You did also have, what was it, Antonio Vargas defending his title against Daigo Higa, and and that one ended up being a draw, 113 in every single scorecard. You could have had Daigo Higa be the new champion, but fell short once again. And looked like, according to reports there earlier, as of like 5 or 6 hours ago, that Daigo Higa, after having that failed attempt once again to try to win a world title, said, you know what, hey, man, I'm good. 2 consecutive draws this year. That's it. I'm done. Hanging up the gloves there. So after about an 11-year professional career, for Daigo Higa. Looks like that's it for him here in the professional ranks. And you also had Kaiosuke Takami defeat Eric Rosa by a technical knockout there in the light flyweight division. So there you go. So that's what you had there for today. And that's, like I said, that's it for me, man. Big ups once again for everyone that's been able to listen live. Like I said, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Trying to get to 3,000 subscribers at least on YouTube, and we're trying to build up the subscriber base there on Rumble as well. So until next time, folks, I'll catch y'all later, man. Peace out.